Which reminded me, and this is why I love your Substack.
Thanks.
Because it's therapeutic. It's part of what I believe that we use. Obviously, you're skilled and you're talented, but you've dedicated your life to this, right? So does that mean we don't rely on your expertise because you're part of a professional helping industry? No, I think people who dedicated their lives to learning these things for the good of humanity, we need to in some ways promote that this is what you do, and we make a choice, right? Is what you are saying, does that help me? Do I see the value in what you're sharing? And sometimes there's a simplicity to it. And the best teachers are able to communicate complex phenomenon in ways that people can understand. So your last, one of your last Substack articles, yesterday. It was the last one, was around the metaphor of the dog and barking. I'm going to let you just tell this story and then how this can be useful for people.
I'll try. So one of the most powerful yet most difficult concepts to explain for me is self-regulation. And when I use the word self-regulation, I refer to what thoughts and emotions and impulses do, what's in their nature. They regulate themselves. They don't need an outside force to bring them down. In fact, it's their nature to rise and peak and then taper off, which you could talk more about. And I'm constantly trying to figure out metaphors to explain that, because still to this day, language is limited in describing that. And I should say that both professionally and personally, the fact that emotions self-regulate and difficult thoughts self-regulate is it's the game changer for me also personally in terms of being with it. So yeah, that was the backstory. I'm trying to figure out ways to describe this, also not using words of self-regulation because it might be too abstract. And so I kind of tasked my mind to come up with metaphors, and it listened. So the other day, just before I got here to the US, every time I enter my office back in Copenhagen, which I do every day, my neighbor's dog barks as a dog, and it barks every time, as in every single time we open the front door. And then it stops barking once I'm inside my door, which is to the left, and the dog is to the right. And first I was like, it's kind of annoying, this barking dog. And then I was like, okay, it must be kind of annoying for the owner too, with 5-7 clients entering every day. And then my mind started going, so what about the dog's perspective of this, which I like? What's the dog doing? What's driving the repetitive barking behavior? And I started putting myself into that shoes. Okay, from the dog's perspective, it's only reinforced in the fact that the barking works. That's its only experience. So intruder appears, I bark, intruder leaves. So the dog never experiences what would happen if it didn't bark. See, it's only reinforced and strengthened in the belief that the only way to get this intruder, which I'm fairly sure the dog thinks we are, because it just hears a loud sound of doors smacking, people walking. The dog's only experience is that it has to bark. But me knowing as a human that all of those clients, including myself, would have walked out of that hallway without the barking, that would be the natural turn of events, right? I then use that as a metaphor for self-regulation. Like the intruder enters the hallway and goes into Anders' office would regulate itself. It doesn't need any barking. But the dog, how on earth can you tell that to the dog? You see? So, and then I use that as a metaphor for what we humans do. We don't bark. We suppress and distract and think positively and think realistically, which some people might, that appears as a good thing. Okay, I can counter my negative thoughts with a positive or realistic or compassionate one. That sounds good. Well, it's definitely better than suppressing, but it takes a lot of energy if you have to regulate your thoughts every time by doing something to them. Even though the realistic, positive, compassionate thoughts are true, it's not necessarily a good way to regulate it in the moment, because it can take a lot of time, and a lot of people just end up ruminating, worrying, or relying on a lot of cognitive force to regulate it. And that's where self-regulation comes in, the idea that doing nothing would also get you the same place. So we don't bark. We do other things. Suppress, distract, avoid even. And I was trying to come up with a metaphor that, okay, how do we help people understand that their barking is part of the problem, and that their thoughts, emotions, intrusions, impulses would follow the same pattern. They would get triggered for whatever reason, peak, and then they would regulate themselves. So really what I'm trying to do is help people understand the true nature of emotion, which I think is a point in itself, talking about techniques, like how much do we as clinicians or helpers, how much is our job to force techniques and other ways of doing stuff on a person, as opposed to talking about emotions, thoughts, trauma reactions, impulses in a way that naturally leads you to regulate it adaptively. I hope that difference makes sense. So the difference really comes down to, and then I'll stop. Sorry. The difference comes down to, what do you believe is the natural course of an emotion? So here's an emotion. It'll stay with me, escalate, overwhelm even if I don't do something to it. So my job is to make it not escalate and overwhelm me. That's the first thing. The other thing is, the other belief would be, okay, here's an emotion. Its natural course is actually to peak and fade if I don't do something. So my job is more not to maintain it, not to feed it, not to strengthen it, more so than it is to actively push it away. And that's what I'm trying to describe for people.